HR specifically has a lot of new and really cool technology that people are working with. So today I wanted to go through the top 20 frequently asked questions for HR professionals. So, what are the main goals for implementing an HR AI chatbot? So, obviously, automating routine queries, so things that employees have questions about or things that they're asking on a very regular basis. So, open enrollment or things like that. So, that means that these really routine queries can be answered by the chatbot when the answers are like really well laid out inside of documentation. It's a perfect use case for AI. Improving engagement and reducing costs. A lot of the time, employees have questions that they want to ask but are scared to, or intimidated, or just don't have the time to walk over to HR, don't want to burden people. By giving them access to a chatbot, they can have this engagement, they can ask these questions without judgment at any time and be able to get answers quickly, which reduces costs because obviously they're getting the right answers to their questions. They're not burdening HR staff at all hours of the night, and you can actually have less people manning phones because you have access to these chatbots. Those are the main goals, and then because of that, you can set measurable goals based on how many queries it's answering, what the engagement is looking like, and what costs it is actually reducing. That leads us to our next question. Which HR tasks should an AI chatbot prioritize? So, high volume, repetitive tasks, things that are asked a lot or needed to check in with, things that employees might need to do a few times a year that usually they don't have the time to go and relearn the systems because they're not actively using it all the time. So things like leave balances, benefits enrollment, company policies and processes, all of those questions can be handed off to an AI chatbot that makes it a lot easier for, again, employees to access this information. So how you can decide what frequent tasks are going on is you just ask your people, what questions are they answering that are very repetitive? What things are they getting to that they say again, right? And you can ask that, and from there you can deduce what exactly are these high volume repetitive tasks. Who's going to use the HR chatbot? So the ideal situation is that employees, of course, are going to be using it. So what this looks like is employees have a question, they ask the chatbot, and there's always the human in the loop element, but they can get answers to their questions immediately. And then if there's anything wrong or the data is not right, then the HR professional can then step in and correct it if need be. Job candidates, if you so choose, you can have basically you have a ton of people that you're vetting, and you can actually hand them your HR chatbot and it'll answer their questions about what it's like to work at the company, what culture looks like, what benefits look like, this sort of semi onboarding where they're not quite hired yet, but maybe they have a lot of questions associated with the company. A lot of HR staff don't necessarily want to hand off this to AI because they want to have a sense of who is applying for their roles. And those questions give you a lot of indication as to who you're investigating to fill a role. And so there's two options for that. You can obviously just not have it be open to the public and your job candidates, or you can just make sure that all of these questions are logged and handed off to the proper hiring person. HR staff is another one. Ideally, the chatbot, if it's done, is trained on all of the information that is available to your employees, like employee handbooks, things like that. So HR staff, maybe they have a question that they don't really know, or maybe they need to look something up. An AI chatbot that's trained on these things is going to give information a lot faster than just doing a basic search through the documentation. So it can actually say, here's your answer to your question. Here's the reference inside of the documentation to where that answer might be. And if you need more information, this is where you should look. How can an AI chatbot improve candidate experience during recruitment? Recruitment is this very interesting piece of a company because there's pieces that you really want to be part of. There's pieces that are a little bit more complicated. Instant FAQ answers, so things like when is the application deadline, what benefits are offered, clarifying questions about the role. If you've trained your chatbot properly, it can have all this information and actually give it to your candidates immediately. It can do real-time status updates. If someone's like, hey, I just want to check in on my application? How are things looking? This is something that is a pain for HR staff to go and follow up with all of the 200 applications to a role that didn't quite make it. AI can actually draft all of these responses, or it can actually have the option of just, if they ask, it can respond. Personalized interactions, it can actually write its answers, of course, based on what job roles are there. Maybe there's another role that is ideal for this candidate to apply for. The AI can go and analyze current listings at the company and suggest to this candidate, hey, according to your resume, you're actually a better fit for this one. Would you like to apply? Which can really, if you have someone that applies that's actually really good talent, but they're not applying to the right role, AI can actually divert them to the right application. How will employees and candidates be encouraged to use the HR chatbot? This is an interesting space because there's a negativity from some people about artificial intelligence, and other people are really excited about it. And so making sure to basically set it up for success and not have that culture of negativity surrounding it is really important. So an internal campaign teaching people how to use it, showing the ideal use cases, showing how powerful it can be for answering questions, and then integrating it into like your existing tools. So not just having it exist on some random site, but having it inside of Slack or Teams or whatever your internal conversation platform is, having it live there so it's accessible and easy to use. Building some confidence is going to be the key. So if, for example, people ask you questions via email, then having the bot respond and then saying, this is the chatbot response, and it's exactly how I would respond. So making sure that you're showcasing all of the really amazing features that these have can really encourage people to utilize the tool. How can a chatbot align with your company's policies and brand tone? This is something that is really critical in how a chatbot is built. If all you're doing is connecting a basic LLM and throwing a couple documents at it, then you're going to get what you get, which is not very great. Chatbots and AI is all about the information that is provided to it and how it's trained on that information. So you need to obviously give it up-to-date info on your employee handbook and any other documentation you may have. You need to go through some rigorous testing and updating it regularly whenever you have policy changes. And then the brand tone comes down to, how are you currently interacting with your employees? Do you have standards written? And if you can take some data on how your HR actually currently interacts with your employees and train the AI on that, then it can really showcase how AI can just slot right into your current systems and actually provide answers in the exact brand tone that you are looking for. What metrics measure an HR chatbot success? So obviously user satisfaction is number one. How satisfied with their interactions are your employees? Are they happy? Are they getting the right answers? Are they angry afterwards? What kind of verbiage are they using? A lot of people get really angry and frustrated with automated systems, and I think it's really important to be clear that it's an automated system. But if you're clear and then you ask for feedback, generally people are pretty positive if you've trained it properly and it's giving the right answers. Response time obviously is super critical, and HR teams are busy. And so a lot of the time that response time can actually be a little long because it's a human that needs to sit down at a desk and respond to emails or calls or whatever it may be. But with chatbots, you can significantly drop that, and you can see how fast these responses are getting out. Resolution rate is how often are these conversations being escalated to an HR rep. So let's say employee asks a question, AI responds and says, you know what, this is a little bit out of my wheelhouse. We should probably loop someone in. How often is that happening? Obviously, there's some situations where we absolutely do not want AI to be handling it entirely, and we want an HR representative, someone that is actually representing the company's interests, to be there. And so we can eliminate which ones are that situation where we don't want the AI running it, and then which situations where the AI should have been able to handle it. And those should be very few and far between. So cost savings, it's pretty easy to calculate when you take, okay, how long would it have taken me to write this email response or this chat response in Slack, and multiply that by how many queries are being answered by the chatbot. How will the chatbot integrate with your existing HR systems? There are countless different systems for managing HR tickets, employees, payroll, all of these things. It's not one size fits all with how it's going to integrate, but here's the basic flow, right? You're going to map your tech stack. So you need to list out all of the things that you're currently using to interact with your employees, to maintain all of these things. You're going to identify which ones have API support, and then you're going to connect them all with those APIs through your AI chatbot system, right? If you have a third party, they're really good at doing this. You're going to link all of this sort of stuff together. And then this is the test and deployment phase. So you have to see where it's pulling data, how it's pulling data, and then how it's responding to these questions. Is it responding accurately? Is it using the brand tone? All of these things. So there's lots and lots of different systems out there. Most of them, if not all, have an API that will connect with these chatbots. So they'll integrate however your systems are set up to integrate with. And generally, you can even come up with some custom systems if they don't support exactly how you want it to be. This is all wishy-washy because every single organization is different. All the tools they use are different. And obviously, people use the same tools, but not everyone uses the exact same set of tools. Usually there's one or two that are different or whatever it may be. And this is where you need to analyze, okay, which steps of this can we connect? Which steps need a custom connection system? And then how are we going to connect them all? And that's the wonderful part of AI is it can actually take all of this data and really utilize it in a way that is amazing. And it can connect data points that you couldn't before because it's talking to all of your systems. How will the chatbot escalate complex queries to human HR staff? Escalation is a really important part of AI systems. And this is human in the loop, right? You're not just letting an AI run and doing whatever it wants and answering questions willy-nilly because that's how you get into trouble. So there needs to be a way that your AI chatbot can contact a human when it runs into trouble or is unsure or hits a topic that you as an organization are not comfortable with the AI chatbot handling on its own. So generally how this works is, let's say Martin has some questions, sends an email to the HR general inbox, and this is when you have some trigger points, right? Maybe the AI chatbot drafts an email and says, okay, Martin's actually asking about things that are probably not appropriate, or maybe they're sending up some red flags about, he's like asking about severance, things like that. It's okay. Why does he think he's getting fired? That's something that an HR person should probably sit down and analyze. So the bot, maybe it drafts an email, but then it pings HR staff saying, hey, probably should take a look at this. It can do it via email, ticketing system. Maybe it assigns it to the proper person. It pings someone in Slack. Maybe the message was initially in Slack and now the chatbot's, okay, we need to hand this off to the proper channels. Let's loop this person in. And then it creates a new chat or whatever it may be. However you want that contact to be established, it can send that message. It routes it to the right person, informs the user that it's looping the HR team in for further assistance. And these escalations are really important to track. Why did it escalate? Was it something that we want escalated? Is it something that the chatbot just isn't trained on? It doesn't have enough data on? Is it just a sensitive topic? Is it something that should be handled? Anyway, so that's how that works. And it's really important to have this human in the loop. This is what is going to lead to success down the road. And you can train your chatbot every step of the way on these complex queries. And eventually it can handle more and more complex ones. But generally, when you have these escalations, that's really ideal and helpful because now you're taking 100 queries and maybe only 5 of them need an HR staff to take a look at. How can we collect user feedback to improve chatbot performance? So in-chat prompts are obviously the easiest way. Hey, I have a question. Here's your answer. On a scale from 1 to 5, how did I do? Right? You can just keep it that simple. Short surveys. So you send out a company-wide survey. Hey, did you use the chatbot? How did you feel? Or it can just be after each use. It's like a random sample. Analytics tracking. A chatbot can be trained to tag its conversations. So it can say, was this resolved? What was the topic? What level of employee was this? When did I escalate it, or was it escalated? That sort of thing. And now you have qualitative data that you can now turn into quantitative data and analyze it properly. Regular reviews is you have the HR and IT teams, the people that are in charge of the chatbot implementation, to review the different conversations that maybe were flagged or all this data that we have in this analytics tracking. And now you can prioritize enhancements. And the chatbot itself can actually provide the data visualizations necessary for you to make some decisions, which is really cool. And dashboards are obviously amazing, but taking, again, qualitative data, opinions, feelings, that sort of thing, and turning it into quantitative data, numbers, is really what is going to be ideal. Which platforms should the HR chatbot work on or inside of? Obviously, it's wherever your employees work. Here's some recommended platforms that we've seen work really well. Slack, Microsoft Teams, email, Google Workspace. If you have an HR portal, if you want to, you can develop a mobile app so that your employees have access to it in that form. And how you choose this system is you basically deploy it on whatever channels your employees are used to using. So if they are using Slack to communicate with human resources, then that's where you deploy your bot. If they're using Teams, that's where you deploy your bot. If they're using email, that's where you deploy your bot, so on and so forth. Because it's important that employees are comfortable with how they're interacting with this thing, because it should feel natural. It's natural language processing after all. It shouldn't be a new complicated process. These are designed to function in the places where your employees work. And that's the ideal situation. If an employee has a question that they would send to an HR person, how are they sending that question? And that's where you implement your chatbot. What training data is needed to teach the chatbot common HR questions? So this is a question we get all the time. What kind of documentation do we need? What sort of training data do we need to hand over? Your core HR documents. So employee handbook, any policy documentation that you have, frequently asked questions. For example, if you get a lot of questions about your different benefits or leave policies or payroll, then that needs to be uploaded. All of the information about your benefits, right? So all of your health plans, the different investment options that your employees may have, all of that stuff can be uploaded into your bot, and then now they have those answers. Historical query data. So if you have a log of all the past 1,000 tickets that your employees have asked and then been answered by HR staff, that's great training data to hand over to a bot, because now it has real life in context situations to draw from and know what its answers can be. If you have data that is clean and labeled, meaning you say, oh, this employee is at this level, this is their benefits package that they've chosen, and this is the questions that they had about it, this is how it was answered, and all of that sort of things, it can really give a chatbot exactly what it needs to answer things properly. Should you build your chatbot in-house or use a third-party platform? So your options are basically to hire some people and develop it in-house, or reach out to a third party. Let's talk about what it looks like if you were to hire somebody, okay? You have to hire somebody that knows what they're talking about and has done this before, which in a world of AI that's all pretty new, these people are very rare. They're very expensive. Those salaries are very hard to carry. These people are often recruited, right? They're headhunted all the time, and they get offers for crazy amounts of money because everybody wants it. So you need skilled developers, and those people are getting taken from you. There's so many different options here, and it can vary wildly based on implementation. If you have a third party that's done this before, they know what to look for, they know all the common pitfalls, they're going to be cheaper because they have a team that can get things done a lot faster, and they are used to it. They're building things all the time. They're beginner friendly because they have all of the knowledge on how to make sure that these bots are trained properly and know the steps. And then there's an ongoing cost. If you're building it yourself, there's going to be ongoing costs anyway, because you need the hardware that needs to be maintained, or you're using some sort of third-party API that is billing you based on usage. With this, it's the same thing, but now you have a partner that can work with you. For very large organizations, it might make sense to hire some people, but generally, even then, it makes a lot more sense to hire a third party because they know what they're doing. They have a lot of different use cases to draw from and experience, which is very rare in this day and age when it comes to AI. How often will the chatbot's knowledge base need updates? So generally, we recommend quarterly reviews, schedule regular times when you can check in, reviewing the data that is provided by the chatbot, any conversations and any pitfalls that you're running into. When you have policy changes, for example, you have a parental leave revision, that needs to be immediately updated inside the chatbot. Otherwise, it's working on old information and you're providing answers that are just not factual anymore. That's really critical. So anytime there's an update, this should and needs to be automated. So if you have a folder where that's like your public facing documentation, that folder should also be accessed by the chatbot. And so when it's updated for employees, it's updated for the chatbot as well. Gap monitoring. So you can analyze all of these user queries. And whenever there's a topic that the chatbot isn't sure on or doesn't have enough data, it usually hands it off to staff, but that can be used as an opportunity to flag those conversations and say, hey, I need more information on how to answer these types of questions, especially if they're happening more than once. If you have 2 or 3 responses to a question that the chatbot's not sure on, then it's okay. We need to either flesh out the documentation or write a procedure to answer this. Version control, tracking revisions. What is the status of your chatbot? And if you need to roll back or whatever it may be, keeping track of all the changes made every step of the way. At those quarterly reviews or whatever policy changes you may have made, staying on your toes there is really important. How will the chatbot ensure secure access to sensitive employee data? How is it going to access this data and then not broadcast it to the world? All of the benefits that your employees have, their different pay scales, that sort of thing. Making sure that you limit what data your chatbot has access to based on what conversation it's having is really important, so that there isn't some weird prompt engineering that can get it to spill the beans on all of the private company data. That sort of thing is really getting more and more common. It's like a new era of hacking, if you will. But if you build your bot properly and the person building it knows what they're doing, you can really limit how much data is actually being spilled across conversations. For example, Martin, who just got hired, shouldn't have access to the salary and benefits of the CEO. He shouldn't know and understand that. So how do you make sure that there's proper walls in place for your chatbot so that they can't get there? And having a partner that knows what they're doing is really important here. It's really easy to just connect a bunch of data and let a chatbot run, but making sure that it's set up properly with proper limitations is what is going to basically have something that's useful but dangerous, and something that's really useful and safe and effective and consistent. That's the difference, is someone that knows what they're doing. Should the chatbot support multiple language for a diverse workforce? One of the most amazing pieces of a chatbot is it actually can talk to your employees in their native tongue. If someone from a different country that you've hired via outsourcing has a question about the employee handbook, but your employee handbook is written in English and they're speaking a different language, they can ask the chatbot a question in their native language. Chatbot then can take that and search the documentation and then provide an answer in their native language using the original English version as the source of truth. And they're getting very good at this, especially because they have all the context necessary. It's not just a Google Translate. It's actually taking it, and it takes all of the data into account and can translate it using that context so that the employee has all the information that they need. So this is really amazing for these multinational teams that have a lot of different languages going on. And even if all of your employees speak English, it's just more convenient and easier for them to understand, and it eliminates confusion when they can ask in their own language. So you can actually start small then scale. So what that means is you have your main language, and then you can add languages as needed and do a little bit of testing, make sure it works properly. And every model is different in what it actually provides. But long story short is you have people that can take their language and ask questions to the documentation and get answers that they need or have questions about. So that is the top questions that we get from HR professionals looking to implement a chatbot. If you have any questions, please reach out. Again, this is Bottable AI. We love to build bots that save people time and money, and you'd be amazed what we can do for your organization. So let us know.